Welcome to Commitment, and you're already off to the races because you committed to this course. So we have some great stuff in here. When you think about commitment, commitment is the action element of covenant, and commitment is the part where we're doing the work, committed to the covenant that creates the safety, again, the safety in our marriage that is so important. Safety is important because it allows us to make mistakes and to feel safe and not to feel threatened. And we all operate better when we feel safe. When you think of a basketball team, Pam loves basketball analogies now. When you think of a basketball team, when they start to get a big lead, they all start performing a lot better, right? They start draining threes. The records are all set when you have these giant score gaps. And it's no different in our marriage. When we're operating and we feel safe, then we tend to operate better. Things are easier. The work is lighter. So the commitment also includes our commitment to our marriage, but also committing to put God first in our personal relationship and in our marriage relationship.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of the movie that we just saw last weekend, The Jesus Revolution.
Yes, that was, if you haven't seen it, it's a great movie, but it's about Calvary Chapel and Chuck Smith and how that got started. And there's this cute couple in there, Greg Laurie and Kath. So Kath meets Greg Laurie and she becomes a Christian. Spoiler alert, just a little bit. So Kath meets Greg Laurie and she had just become a Christian. And so she says to Greg, if you ever get between me and God, we're done. Yeah. And I think that is such a beautiful example of how we need to have God first and our wife second, because that is where the commitment comes in, that practical commitment to focusing on my relationship with God, which gives me lets me tap into the limitless supply of love and grace and mercy and submission and sacrifice, all of these critical ingredients that let us build into the things we're going to cover in the last week related to fun. In today's session, we're going to walk through some biblical examples of relationships that talk about commitment and help you understand commitment's kind of like the electricity for the mood lighting in your romance, in your relationship.
Mood lighting and commitment. I do not see the correlation there.
It does seem a little odd that commitment or covenant could be associated with romance, but it is true. If you stop and think about it, when we feel romantic, it implies we feel safe. And when we feel romantic or romanced, it also involves action. So it's really our covenant and our commitment to covenant, which is our actions. Our commitment is the what, the covenant is the what, and the commitment is the how. And so when we are following through with that covenant and commitment, it creates the safety, which gives us the bedroom for romance.
Okay, makes more sense now.
So when we talk about safety, it's really boundaries and hedges are the things that are going to protect your marriage and foster this sense of safety. And so when you think about when we were in our 20s, what would you have defined a hedge as?
Well, a hedge, I would think that it would be something with landscaping or like a bush of some sort.
A gardener. That's a different kind of hedge, as you know. But yeah, that's the point. When we were younger, and you may not necessarily think, or maybe you have heard this term, but it is so important. And we're going to talk about why that is so important in your marriage. So a personal recent story, as you remember. So I was on a ski trip with some friends, some guy friends, and it was my friend's birthday, and we're up in British Columbia, and we were out having dinner one night after skiing, and we're coming out of the restaurant and there's this, 6-7 women who I think were wrapping up dinner, and I was going to the bathroom, and they start talking to my friends, one of whom is single. And so they start talking, I go to the bathroom and I come back out, and the one girl walks right up to me and she's like, hey, and, shakes my hand. And my answer was, hi, I'm married. That was my answer.
That was training in effect.
No, but that's an example of a hedge and a boundary is I will never, and this is our commitment to each other, is we're never going to try and toe the line. We're never going to be disrespectful to the potential of temptation or even, let's just say I was in that scenario and I know that I would never cheat on you. I love you. You're the only person for me. But I just kind of bantered back and forth with this woman and didn't mention I was married. And someone who knew Pam happened to be in this random town and saw me talking friendly, very nicely with this woman and seeming to be flirty. And that got back to Pam. What would have happened
right
in that circumstance? And so it's really important when we think about boundaries and hedges, that we have a plan of attack before those situations occur, and that we both have thought through and agree upon what those hedges and boundaries look like. So you're operating, from the same playbook. And so that's going to be our exercise tonight. But and by the way, when that happened, I immediately told Pamela I didn't want her to ever hear anything from anybody that she didn't hear from me first, wherever possible. I mean, what were your thoughts on that circumstance?
Well, when you told me, of course, I was like, if I were that girl, I would have done the same thing. But honestly, I was very appreciative of the fact that you came full forth to the table and said, this is what happened. A boys trip, girls are always a little bit more nervous when their man steps out with the guys. And I think just by him being forthcoming and telling me, hey, this is what happened, I was able to rest assured that nothing did happen and that there was nothing to hide.
Yeah, thanks. And I treat, that she trusts me to go on these trips and not worry, as I treat that as something as I need to foster and facilitate. I always want her to feel safe and not worry. And so one of the things that comes up when we talk about hedges and boundaries is the topic of privacy, right? The world would say, well, even though we're married, I have my privacy, that's my right. I have my own individualism, and there's this separation that the world would tell you still exists in marriage. And that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says to become one, and that there really is no purpose for me to have privacy from my wife. If she wants to access my phone, my passwords, my bank account, there is no purpose biblically. Now, it doesn't mean we go to the bathroom together. It doesn't mean that we're doing everything together. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that when we're joined as one, privacy in those things, while you can maintain them, these are opportunities for bad things to happen, or they can imply bad things are happening, right? What are your thoughts around that? I mean, we know we've seen all extremes. We've seen couples share a social media account because they don't want anyone to come in from the side.
Well, I think it depends on the couple. I think that some people have different issues around privacy that don't warrant extreme caution because there's a lot of trust that's already built up. But I do think that in issues of passwords and things like that, that those should be available to be accessed at any time, whether they are or not. They should be available. There shouldn't be a fence around anything, because two are one, and that if there is a breakdown in the secure or privacy section of your marriage, I think it can lead to a lot of intimidation, some definite insecurity issues. And so therefore, I think if you go into it knowing that you're going to be together in all of this and communicate about your privacy, that I think it's just a win for both of you.
Yeah, I agree. And the caveat would be is if one of you has, some prior trauma around trust, we need to be careful that we don't project that onto our future spouse. So we want to do the work and the healing. If I've had my trust, radically violated, we kind of did, but we had to do that work because we didn't want to bring that to the table. I didn't want to assume Pam was doing the things that my ex-wife did, because that would be unfair. But I was able to communicate my experience, and so she could interpret some things that I may not have asked had I not had that life experience.
And I could choose to honor that so that you wouldn't have those insecurities.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that is talking about your history in certain categories can be very helpful for you as a couple to work together. When those things arise, it might be a trigger point for you. But you'll have in the exercise for you is to talk through these different circumstances that may come up. We have provided examples for you to look at, but you create your own hedges and talk through those and build your own protection mechanism for your marriage.